coming to this session. Sounds like everybody here is interested in the business track, but that doesn't mean it's not related to the technology track, right? So I'm going to cover a little bit of that. We're going to talk about e-commerce strategy, and the idea here is to sort of give you a cookbook or some ideas that you can take away as you think about your e-commerce businesses. I'm from New York. I talk really quickly, and we have a lot of stuff to go through, and I'm going to show you a lot of visuals. I prefer to do that rather than a lot of bullets. So I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you, and we're going to try to have time for a Q&A at the end. But feel free to find me afterwards, and again, just try to absorb what you can. And if you walk away with 3 things, then that's success. So first of all, when I was thinking about this session on e-commerce strategy, there's a lot of buzzwords floating around, and I thought, well, actually, probably a lot of you are not just e-commerce. How many of you are also retailers or catalogers or have another channel? Okay, so quite a few of you. So then I thought, all right, well, this should be like multi-channel strategy, right? But actually, multi-channel, I hear, is going away, and it's really omni-channel, because now mobile, I believe mobile is a channel, social is a channel, lots of different areas are becoming channels. So it's omni-channel. It's how to be omnipresent. But really, what is this about? This is about commerce. This is about selling your products. This is about building a brand. This is about pleasing customers. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Strategy. Strategy is only as good as the execution. So here, this person wanted a house, a garage, a driveway, and a tree. But I don't know how good that strategy worked out. And sometimes the best intentions don't always work. This car needed a tire. It got a tire, but is it the right tire? Is it the one that's going to fit what the need is? Maybe not. And what I often hear from within the e-commerce community is a lot of Band-Aids. If I could have $1 every time somebody said a Band-Aid, we end up doing this, not just in technology, but in our operations, in our organization. How many times do you feel like, oh, if I just had that perfect person, or if I could change the process this way, or we're doing this manually this way? It's sort of part of our businesses, but sometimes if you have too many Band-Aids, I think it's a sign that it's a time for a change. Making things work. How many times have you told your team or said to yourself, we've just got to make this work, we've just got to pull this together? And how many integrations look like this, right? Or how many projects look like this? I mean, water is coming out, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about getting from here to there, sort of this yellow brick road. Let me tell you a little bit about my company. So Fit for Commerce, I started this company 3.5 years ago, and the reason why I started the company is because I heard a lot of pain, a lot of confusion from the merchant community. And in a prior life, I worked with a lot of merchants on a specific technology. And what I found is that you guys have day jobs. You are merchandising, you're selling products, but you need technology. E-commerce and multi-channel is very dependent on technology. And then you need many other factors. This is my jaw exercise because I have TMJ right now. So in e-commerce, the strategy piece is very important to building the rest of your business. So what we have is an e-commerce consultancy. It's a boutique consultancy. We're about 20 people. And what we've put together is sort of what I call the rental e-commerce unit. So we have former merchants, former marketers, former providers, former technologists, people who've sat in your shoes before and had to implement from scratch or build to $100, $200, $300 million in e-commerce business. E-commerce diligence is a philosophy and a methodology that we use that's built around the concept of doing your homework, doing your diligence, whether you're creating a strategy or choosing a technology or implementing a solution or hiring staff or building out your team. That diligence is what makes the difference. And too often I don't see people take the time to do that diligence before they go out and buy or execute or partner. Did I say something wrong? Should I talk over it? Should we run out? Okay, I'll keep talking. This is really a test of my ADD, right? Yeah, it is a little hot up here, actually. eCommerce Know-How is a website that is a knowledge base, and it's got quite a number of best practices. It also has a number of providers and solution info, so I encourage you to go there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the mobile commerce benchmark that we've also done, and just a little bit about the kind of clients we work with. Extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, from 0 revenue to 1.5 billion of revenue online. So all different kinds, all different verticals. Okay, this is an overly simple, obvious diagram that says if you're building a strategy, you need to assess, you need to build a strategy, then you need to build a tactical plan, and then you need to execute. And we're going to talk about each one of these. Right? Okay. Everybody calm? All right. So just keep it simple. Again, a lot of this is really motherhood and apple pie, and sometimes it's just taking it back to that level of, really simplifying it down. It's a real test. Right. Okay, e-commerce strategy. So if I really narrow it down, and this was hard, to just a couple of things. What are the pillars of a strategy, of your business, that you need to manage? And I really hand it to each and every one of you, because every day you have to master hundreds and hundreds of things, whether it's where is the button on the site, to what marketing campaign am I running, to what is my team doing. You've got to master all these things. So we're going to talk about merchandising, marketing, the web store itself, technology, operations, and organization. And we're going to talk a little bit also about budgeting and P&L, because you can't do this if your model or your budget doesn't work, right? Okay, some critical success factors. These are the same 7, and we're going to talk through each one. Merchandise. Are the appropriate assortment for the target audience in line with the brand and showcasing the product to sell the most? Okay? By the way, if you want copies of these slides, just drop your business card off, because it's a lot. It's a lot to take notes on. Marketing, being found when someone is searching and driving qualified traffic that will buy and return to buyers to buy from the store. 80% of the time you are being found, okay? So 20% of the time is your people are getting you from your outbound marketing. 20% of the time they're Googling or they're finding you. Functionality on your site. This is similar to design. I kind of define design as how does it look, but the functionality is how does it feel? What are you doing on the site? Are you giving those easy-to-use features? Are you adding features that help the decision process? Technology, appropriate tools and technology and integrations. This morning we heard from the Magento team about some great new technologies and ways of doing things, and how do you leverage that, and how do you leverage the extensions and the community beyond that? Organization. At the end of the day, it's people. It's what are the people on your team qualified to do, talented at doing, motivated to do, and have you empowered them? Operations, the processes that tie this together. Processes should not be making up for a lack of anything else on this page. Processes should be enabling you. And then, of course, budget and P&L. So we're going to come back to those. But just very quickly, how do you know how you stack up? A lot of people ask me this. How do I know? I shop my competitor sites, but really, how can I benchmark myself? And there's many different ways, and it kind of doesn't matter if you do this very formally or with a consultant or by yourself. But the point is, make sure you're always benchmarking yourself. So in one case here, this is a market comp analysis for a sporting goods company. And I know it's very small, and you probably can't see it. But here, this is a multi-channel retailer that has retail stores and a website. And what we did is we took a number of other sporting goods stores. We were looking at their total revenue, the number of stores they have, in order to get a per store revenue. That may or may not be relevant to you. The percent of online to stores is that 5th column over. We're also looking at conversion rate. Not always the golden rule of thumb, but what are other competitors doing on their conversion rate and on an AOV, average order value? So what's the size that they're doing? So some of these are out of whack. Oh, and online SKUs, how many SKUs? It's very hard to find one competitor that is exactly like you. more than likely you have multiple competitors that you're comparing yourself to and you're monitoring. And the whole idea here is you're monitoring these peers, right, for different things. What are they doing on their sites? How many SKUs do they have? How do they handle a large SKU assortment if you have a large SKU assortment? If you only have 10 SKUs, maybe someone else has 10 SKUs that isn't even selling the same kind of products you are, but is doing some interesting things. So here, for example, this helped us understand what we thought a conversion rate ought to be and what we thought an AOV could be and what the opportunities are. So, we didn't just average all these up and say, okay, this is what we should be doing. So the point, it's data points that you want throughout the marketplace. The IR Top 500 is a great way of comparing yourself. They're coming out with a new 501 to 1,000, actually. So they have the top 500 and they have the next 500. So some of you may be able to leverage that more. But again, it's about what are different retailers doing. Some of the data, there's some questionable data in the top 500. I have heard that there are some inaccuracies. But again, you're looking for data points for what others are doing. This happens to be about conversion rates and average ticket. Other ways of gathering intel, consult with an expert, mystery shopping your site and other sites, looking for financials on Hoover's, on D&B, mentioned the top 500 guide. Vendors. I think vendors are full of knowledge. Your systems integrators or the folks in the other room or even other point solution vendors you have that have nothing to do with your marketing. They still see a lot. And they see what works, and they hear what works, and they're out there. If they're good, they're listening to other retailers. So I would ping them, and I would ask them, I have this challenge. What do you think? Industry news, blogs, newsletters. I know many of you are involved with that. You're here, you're attending, and you're networking at events. Recruiting. When you recruit, don't just recruit for that role. Ask that person for what's worked. What mistakes have you had? What lessons learned? I see people recruiting not just for the sake of filling the role, but also for education. And what you'll find, especially if you're recruiting people who've been around the industry, is that they're a wealth of knowledge. So use that channel. Usability studies, eye tracking studies, focus group, all of these kinds of tools are there. They're becoming much more affordable. I'm going to share some of those examples. And then just kind of a quick laundry list of other competitive data sources. I'm sure many of you are using these. But do what you can to figure out what your competitive set is and how you're going to track them on a month-to-month basis. Okay? It is work, and it doesn't mean that you have to do the full analysis every month, but just as important as listening to your clients is understanding what your competitors are doing. And remember, your competitors aren't necessarily your direct competitors in your category. We're now fighting for every dollar from him or her, right? So that competitor could be the same demographic, but be selling a totally different set of products. Okay, merchandise. Appropriate assortment for the target audience, in line with the brand, and showcasing products to sell. So the two ways that I think about what I call e-merchandising, meaning e-commerce merchandising, so we're not talking about retail merchandising here, is what are you selling and how are you selling it? The what are you selling is what products are you selling, what is the assortment, how wide is the assortment and how deep is the assortment? Because, like the question this morning about Amazon begs the question of what are you going to do to differentiate yourself? It might be assortment. It might be you have every size, every color of that kind of shoe or shirt or accessory for that digital camera or gardening equipment. I was just at a gardening conference that can be offered, and they will find you. If you're findable, they will find you. So you have to find what is that merchandise. And so many times I've been in strategy sessions about technology actually in operations, and sometimes the answer actually starts with merchandise. So your merchandise, though, has to be brand aligned. We had a client who was a great seller of wall plate switches. Who would think to have a site about wall plate switches, right? And she rebranded her site. It was called Market Expo. And she started offering couches and lamps and other things. And it was great because you could go there and you can get all these other things. But it actually hurt her core business. So sometimes you have to make those hard decisions to stick with your brand. And then, of course, there's just the heavy cost of goods, pricing. What's your pricing strategy? Some of you have really complex pricing to-dos because you're checking every day what your competitors are pricing if your strategy is more about pricing. And then, of course, multi-channel dynamics. How are you driving traffic to stores, from stores, to catalog from the web, and so on? How are you selling is about romancing the product. Remember that phrase, romancing the product. This is about when someone comes to your site, how do you get them to buy? Do you have robust information on the website? Is there an emotional connection that you're making? Are you using a hero image or something that really draws them in? Are you leading her to the sale? Are you making it easy for her to put something into her basket? I say her, but of course it could be him or her. Are you making it easy for them to actually buy the product and check out? Guided selling. If you have something that has many attributes, are you helping her make that decision to get to what she's looking for, whether it's that device or that book or that dress? And then, again, cross-channel driver. So just some quick examples of merchandising analysis. Again, I know this is sort of like brain-hurting stuff, but you have to do the analysis, whether it's looking at your merchandise sales by category, by price, matrixing the category to price. All of the data that you have is worthless unless you actually analyze it. So merchandising analysis, ironically, is really more about math and analytics than it is about how the mannequin looks. I shouldn't say it's more, but it's equally. Okay, other examples of romancing the product. In this left-hand nav, are you not only putting the categories, but are you putting things that exemplify how she might be thinking? Maybe she's thinking more about what's a great deal, or maybe she's thinking more about summer because summer is coming up. So don't just keep your category nav based on how you've categorized your product. Have you put a hero image that's inviting? Swatches. If you have something that comes in multiple colors or sizes or versions, are you using these kinds of tools to demonstrate that? Upselling, cross-selling, may we also suggest. I've even seen sites where it's manual, and I know how painful that is to link one product to another product, but that is worth doing even if it's really painful. And again, you'll do the analytics on it, and you'll see how you're increasing that AOV. Also, guides, a fit guide, a configurator guide. How are you helping her understand what this product is? Information about the product, key ingredients, tips, instructions. You can get actually pretty far on this. And it seems like a lot of data, and it is. And again, it requires process and people. But if you do it right, this could make the difference between making that sale and Amazon making that sale. Here's another example. Best if you want to do something. How it works. Again, upsells, cross-sells, coordinating items. In this one tells in stock and ready to ship. Messaging with her, letting her know that this is ready. Grab it now. Alternate images. And then swatching, zoom, 360, and so on. So anything you do on the site that helps tell the story of the products and helps her make that decision, it really is related to merchandising. Okay, marketing. Being found when someone is searching and driving that qualified traffic. Creating marketing budgets, I think, is one of the hardest things that you guys have to do because it is art and science, and there is no, if I do this, then I'll do that. And no matter how much your friend who does this on another site it works, that doesn't mean it'll work on your site. This is a little bit of data here that just says how much as a percent of your revenue is being spent on marketing. And it will vary, okay? But there is this balance of customer acquisition versus customer retention. And everyone knows that upselling a current customer and customer retention, you'll get more of a lifetime value. But you always need new customers, right? Because customers are always going. So what is that balance? Whether it's using branding and advertising, whether you're email, social, or mobile. And again, that 80% rule, that 80% of the time you're getting found, which is why search marketing has become so critical, and it's become a defining moment actually for many retailers, especially smaller ones who are up against the big brands, right? This is where we see some of these smaller retailers winning because they're better at search marketing the big guys, the bigger competitors. This is why long tail and why keywords are so important. Offline, don't forget offline. I've seen some retailers that had no, pure e-commerce put out maybe not a big catalog, but more than a postcard. So somewhere between a postcard and a full catalog, are there some print opportunities? Maybe just to your loyal base, maybe to people who just ordered in the last 3 months. Are you putting package inserts into your packages? All those things are, they're cross-channel if you think about it, or omni-channel, right? At the POS, are you asking for email addresses? Are you noting references? On the customer retention side, many of the same strategies and techniques and tools, additionally loyalty programs, community, using your most loyal people to tell the story for you, and of course content. The more content you can provide around your products, and that can build loyalty. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is make sure you know what you're spending your marketing dollars on and what is it getting. So you take your marketing budget and you figure out what you're spending and what the sales are attributed to. And that's not that easy because sometimes you're getting a phone call and you didn't know that person saw a print ad. But as best as you can, you need to track sources for both traffic and the quality, meaning quality means you may be getting a lot of traffic from a banner ad, but it's not converting, actually, as much as traffic from an email or a search term, right? So you've got to look at not just how many people are coming to your site, but what the quality is, what the conversions are. Use matchbacks. How many of you have catalogs and are using matchbacks or some kind of print? Okay, so print is one of the hardest things to match back to your site because someone sees a catalog or sees a postcard and they don't necessarily call in and say, remember the days of what's your catalog code on the back, right? Now they're going onto your website. So one of the processes that a lot of folks use is a matchback, which is within the last, if you kind of have to experiment with the rule, if I've made a catalog drop to this person or a print drop to this person in the last 30 days, let's say, sometimes it's 15, 30 days, 45 days, then I have a reasonable assumption that they are coming to my site as driven by that. It's a huge assumption, but it's better than no attribution at all, okay? And then, of course, analyzing the house file for size, age, and activity. So many of us think about success in terms of, oh, we've got this really big house file, right? But what's more important is how active is that house file and what's the quality of it. So I may have a really old house file, and I'm emailing them to death, and I might actually be attributing. They may actually be, what's the word? Atrophying. See, that thing did screw me up. Okay, so here's an example. Again, I don't know if you can really see it, but this is just distribution for one retailer across different elements of marketing: email, natural search, page search, banner, and so on. This is about aging. And again, you have to do this kind of analysis in order to understand where you want to go. This one here is abandonment by channel. So in this other retailer, it turns out that the email-driven traffic is actually abandoning more than the others. So what does that mean? Does that mean that my emails are not as high quality? And really people are coming because it's an interesting email, but maybe it's not going to the right landing page. So this is the level of detail that you have to get down to. The other elements of email marketing, of course, are bounce rate, open rate, click-through rate. Here's a couple of benchmarks here that, again, is across, not per vertical, across industry. And the keys to execution here are around segmentation, targeting, messaging. Is the messaging relevant? Frequency, trigger. Are you doing trigger emails? Whether that's because someone came to the site or ordered or abandoned their cart. There's a 25% higher conversion rate for a trigger email than a regular email. Reporting. You can't manage what you're not measuring. So do you have the right reports? So many times, I've yet to see a correct Omniture implementation, actually. So if anybody has one, let me know. But it's all about how you're tagging the site and are you really able to get at what you're looking for. Think in context of context strategy. Just like Blake said this morning, you're contacting your customer many times. You may not even realize it. through email, through print, through store, through mobile, through social, right? So you actually have to look at it from the customer's perspective. How many times is she getting something from me? And then measuring success. ROAS is a common term people use, return on advertising spend. It's basically ROI. Cost per acquisition, you should know how much it's costing you to, even if this is rough justice, numbers on an envelope, do it. And cannibalization versus lift. Many of you, if you've got multiple channels, sometimes worry about cannibalization between channels, and then also you may worry about cannibalization between campaigns. Between your paid and your organic is one of the most the hardest to deal with. Okay, we talked about those. Marketing spend on paid search. Here's a few other benchmarks. Average conversion rate for paid search. These are pulled from a number of different sources, including our research, 3%. Marketplaces, feeds, and comparison shopping engines. I'm kind of grouping those in together. Another way of obviously getting traffic. Conversion rate average we've seen is 3 to 4%. Again, it can vary, so nobody feel badly if you're below that here, but use these benchmarks. Banner ads cost, your CPM could be $10. Your click-through rate could be 0.5%. Again, these are rules of thumb, okay, for you to use. Okay, and then it's time to figure out what your distribution of spend should be. And so here's an example where we've gone through what kind of performance we're getting from different kinds of marketing and done the sort of very, very detailed math work around what we think could be improved or not. And of course, the goal is to get more, for example, more organic traffic than paid, right? Because you want to save money on paid, but you can't do it at the cost of losing rankings. So again, there's that art and that science. This graph here is which marketing budget line item will your company increase or decrease? So you see a lot more towards email, social, and paid search. Less in print, obviously. And some B2C marketing tactics that rank highest for ROI, paid search being the highest, banners and buttons being next. But we see a lot more coming out in terms of SEO as a lot of folks get smarter about how to leverage SEO. And it has a lot to do, of course, with your category and your brand. A few marketing KPIs to think about. How many of you have a defined set of KPIs that you're managing by? Okay, next year, everybody's hands have to go up. Okay? Think about what KPIs you need to manage your business, and everyone on your team should live and breathe those KPIs. Every week, every month, there should be, like a United Way kind of banner, and it should say what those KPIs are. Because if you're not measuring it, if you're not aware of it, then it's really hard to drive by it. Okay, what are you actually doing on your sites? This is one of the hardest. I keep saying that, but there's a lot of hard stuff in your guys' jobs. But what features are you doing? How do you prioritize? There's no shortage of ideas of things to do on your site, right? I mean, I'm sure all of you feel overwhelmed by the amount of things you can do on your site. The hard thing is, how do I prioritize my time and my dollars? My developers guys, my QA guys, my analyst guys, right? Where do we spend our attention? If we can only really implement 10 or 15 features this year, or we're coming up to peak, how are we going to decide that? So one way, of course, is using your analytics. And if it's one thing that you're going to focus on, it's analytics. So next year, everybody will go back, and I'll ask everybody if they've done a funnel analysis. So make sure you know where you're losing people throughout the chain, and constantly do this. And because it's obviously a funnel, but what we found is sometimes the largest chunks of abandonment aren't necessarily the place that you want to focus on. It may be something smaller. In this case here, there's a step between a shipping method page and a payment review page that is only 5% loss. That's nothing compared to the 73%, right, or the 44%. But there are things that we could do to improve that step and reduce that abandonment. And this happens to be $1 billion retailer. So a couple of basis points actually is a lot of money. But even if you're not a $1 billion retailer, you're striving for every percent, every 10th of a percent, every 100th of a percent, and it will build up. Okay? So this is the first moment of truth in terms of looking at your site. Make sure you do some kind of funnel analysis. And your site should be tagged to do the funnel analysis. This is a competitive feature comparison. So here, this is an apparel retailer these are 13 different elements of checkout. Okay? And on the right side are a whole bunch of apparel retailers and who's doing what. And green means that they're doing it, and red means that they're not. So for example, was price. Do you have was price? Was price is this was $100. The was price is $100. It's now $90. So one of the best practices is to show the was price, to show that you've discounted this. And not actually a lot are doing it. So this retailer said no, and 34% of the other ones were not. So this could be an opportunity, but it may also not be, it may not be as important as something else where many others are doing it and you're not. And the reason why this is important is because your customers are being trained to shop a certain way. Okay? So whether it's on your competitor site or not, we are all being trained to expect something when we come to a site. So when the Gap and Old Navy launched that site that had all of the brands in one site, that changed your world actually. You may not realize it, but that changed your world because it meant that now people are expecting multiple brands in one site. They want to be able to check out on one page. They don't want to go through a 5-step process. And lo and behold, all of a sudden we have a new checkout standard in a way, right? So those things matter. Seek out market data. Ask your peers, key reports. This is actually this is some data that we have. And it's based on some surveys by the e-tailing group. And so, for example, this is ratings and reviews, all the way at the bottom where it says apparel. 6% of apparel retailers have ratings and reviews on their site. So if you're an apparel retailer, it's important, but maybe I wouldn't put it at the top of your list. But if you're sporting goods or technology, 86, 88% of those surveyed are using this. That's more of a reason to use it. Okay, eye tracking and usability studies. I am a total convert to eye tracking study. I had never done one before. We did this 2 years ago. And essentially what this does is it tracks the test subject's eyes, where they're looking, the way their mouse is moving, and what they're clicking on. So you're literally recording what they're doing. And you do this with 20, 30 test subjects, and you basically have a sense of how they're looking. Are they looking at that hero image? Are they finding the checkout button? Are they finding the add to cart button? Are they getting lost? Are their eyes wandering around? It's funny, we actually did one on Amazon. I didn't include it in here, but Amazon has some really great best practices, and it has some really horrible practices too. And in one of the pages, the eyes were like all over the place. Okay, and that might be part of their strategy because they're trying to upsell a lot, but the person was looking around looking for the checkout button. So usability study is a way of basically interviewing test subjects as they're shopping your site. You're asking them things like, what do you expect when you hit this button? Or what's your impression when you come to this page? Okay, top recommendations this year. Am I at 10 minutes? Oh my God. Okay, we're going to fly through some of the rest of this. Technology. Okay, you guys feel overwhelmed? Because I feel overwhelmed looking at this. This is one of the hardest things, is trying to understand all these 3-letter acronyms, what you need, and how you need to integrate it. So figuring out your technology strategy, I think is more about breaking it down. Something like this, something a little bit more simplified. And the notion here is just, what are you doing where? Where is data? Where are you collecting data? Where are you storing it? And where does it need to be? So in some cases, your order management system may be the same as your platform. Or your mobile site may be the same as your web store. On Magento now, you can have a mobile site and your e-commerce site. A little bit of stats on mobile adoption. We'll skip through that. Plans for mobile commerce. Ironically, not 17% and 37% have no plans, but actually 46% have plans. All right, technical diagrams. Operations, the point here is really take your operations and actually diagram them out. Who's doing what, when, where is data flowing? These are just some different examples. In fulfillment, if you're trying to decide how to fulfill, you've got to start with what is your inventory size, your SKU count, and your sources, and think through something like this, like a decision tree around how you should fulfill, whether it's in-house, from a 3PL, or vendor dropship, or most likely all of the above, or some combination of the above. Cross-channel, we're seeing a lot of this, in-store pickup, kiosk, endless aisle. So you may have a store, but if on your website you can offer 1,000 more SKUs, that's great, and that's great customer service. And that's a lot of what Nordstrom's is doing. All right, organization. This is sort of a very typical organization structure, and the idea here is that think about the different competencies you need in order to run your business. Don't think about it like a person. What person do I need? Think about what skills and competencies do I need, and then map them out. Okay? And then, whether they form into these buckets or not, or how you move them around is more important. Because you may have a person who does 3 things, but are they 3 different skills? Are they the 3 different skills that you need? This chart here shows a little bit of a, again, rule of thumb in terms of organizational growth. So we've tracked organizations as they've grown and their size. And there's, of course, a general rule that, the more you sell online, the larger team you have. But the nature of that team actually changes. So many of you started as 1 or 2 person shops, and then you became a handful of people, and everybody did everything. We were all in the garage. And now we have to have disciplines, different people sort of dividing and conquering. And then it becomes more dividing and conquering and specialization. And then you start outsourcing because you need more of that expertise. And then there comes a point where that outsourcing makes sense to bring it in-house because no one can tell your story as good as you. So you bring it in-house. And then you get really large and you realize, okay, we can't afford 300 people in our e-commerce team as headcount. So now we're going to outsource again. So we do see sort of this in-house, outsource, decentralized, centralized kind of thing going. When we did this survey on why not mobile, 31% said no one to manage it. And I thought that was really interesting. I didn't expect that. But it's really telling. And I think it's good because you shouldn't take on something that you don't know that you have someone to champion and to manage. Okay, lastly on the budget and the P&L side, the idea here is really, again, I know you can't see this, but is really think about what your P&L is and what your budget is by spelling it out and maybe be a little more transparent too with your team and have them either own a piece of it or own part of it and really understand what % of your budget is going towards marketing and what are you getting for it, what % of your budget is going towards technology and know what you're getting for that, and what % is going towards operations. Okay? These are just different scenarios here where we did in-house fulfillment, out-house fulfillment, in-house customer service, out-house customer service. And you'll find that when you're trying to make these decisions, whether it's about technology or operations, that as a whole, you'll be able to make those decisions better because you see them as a % of what you're working on, and you can benchmark yourself. And you can, as long as it's deliberate, you may be in a growth spurt and say, all right, we've got to really invest in our Magento implementation, and we're going to do a lot more with it. And you may invest in there at a higher rate than you do on, let's say, your fulfillment that year. And then people and overhead and capital investments, of course. So the question is really, if you do these things, can you somehow leapfrog the competition? Because I would argue that some of you are in a position that you may feel like you're a little bit behind, but I think that's actually an opportunity because you can learn from the many mistakes of many others and actually put it together in a way that is pretty well planned out. And could you skip, instead of building each widget on your site, can you leverage the community? Can you leverage Magento, or can you just leverage each other as skills in order to get ahead? All right, so just to leave you with a couple more resources, we talked about these. This site, eCommerce Know-How, at the back of the room, there's quite a lot of stuff. I just grabbed what I could from the office. This is about how to create a budget, and it's got some benchmarks about % of revenue. We have a whole series of these best practices that some of them are back there. The ones I chose were platform, mobile, and social. Shocker, right? And then there's a mobile article, and then this is part of the mobile benchmark. These are a couple of sound bites from the benchmark. And the only thing that I will make a really hard plug for is women in e-commerce. This is a nice little group that just got started. If you are a woman or you work with women, check out womeninecommerce.com. It has nothing to do with Fit for Commerce either. Okay, talked about the best practices and, of course, our QR code. So with that, I think we have 3 minutes. Okay, for any questions. And I'm sorry I threw a lot at you, but...
Well, first off, I again want to give a great thanks to Bernardine.
Thank you.